new episode of the Big Fish, Little Fish podcast. We have another guest episode, which we're super excited about. Someone that was actually in one of our top 3 goal podcast guests. So kicking things off for everyone who's listening in, why don't we introduce the guest by asking him, who is Travis Bishop?
Yeah, so I am the owner of Bishop's Events. We're a race management company. We started out in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and we put on about 150 events throughout the DMV area. Each of those events give back 25% of the profit to charities. So 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, stuff like that.
Yeah, cool. I guess one question that I have, I don't know if you have it as well because we didn't cross check, but let's start at the beginning. What got you into running, right?
Yeah, that was actually a question I had too.
You have a whole organization built around this one sport, right? What got you into that?
Yeah, so we'll go long story because you can always cut it up and whatnot. But when I was in high school, I played football, soccer, and ran track. I was not good at any of them at all. But when I graduated high school, I ended up having a herniated disc in my back. And it took them about a year to kind of figure out what was going on with an 18-year-old. Shouldn't have a herniated disc in your back. Went through PT, rehab, all that kind of stuff, and came out the other end. And I'm like, I'd played all these sports for years. Like, now what do I do? Like, don't have a team I'm associated with. So I did some Googling, joined into a 15K, not knowing how long it was. I did really well until, the later stages of the race. But I decided, okay, I ran a 15K. I had no idea what I was doing. I figured, what's next? So I started running in triathlons, the sprint kind that ends with a 5K at the end. And at that stage, I was getting near the end of my senior year at Mary Washington, and I'm like, okay, what do I do? I want to leave some sort of mark at Mary Washington for whatever that means. So I decided to organize a triathlon. I had a professor that her husband was a triathlete, so she jumped behind the idea to support me doing it. So my senior fall, I had a 3-credit individual study in organizing a triathlon at Mary Washington. And the race made about $2,000 for the charity on campus. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm coming to the end of my college career. I don't know what I want to do, so let me try and figure out, let me keep pursuing this. And so started with organizing a triathlon in Norfolk in August of 2012. And that was my first ever event. And yeah, it just kind of started by some unfortunate injury, and then just kind of jumped into it, figured it out as I went. It was not the best at the beginning. Learned a lot of tough lessons, but yeah, started out with a triathlon, which I wouldn't recommend starting out with. But
what was one of the biggest lessons you did going into it without? Because I'm guessing this isn't a time where YouTube doesn't have mad tutorials. Like Teo and I, we watched, I don't know if you've ever heard of Nick Bear. He does a lot of marathon training. He does a bunch of stuff. So we had a lot of information from that. So you went into it with nothing. So what's something you were like, damn, I wish I knew that?
Starting out trying to organize a triathlon, which had never been done at a university where there's 15 different departments that all have a say in something that no one really cares about. Plus you have a city that hasn't had one. Trying to do that all together and you also not knowing what you're doing, that was tough. So narrowed it down from there to kind of what I do now. But kind of the biggest lesson in the first maybe 10, 20, 30 events is just never assume people know something. Like course markings. You would think it's very obvious, but as soon as somebody starts running, they make the wrong choice almost every time. So you got to make it blatantly obvious. Hey, turn right. There's cones blocking off this path or whatever. But you want to make everything as obvious as possible, and never assume people are gonna figure it out.
Have you ever had someone go way, way, way off course?
Yeah. Early on, I would joke with my staff. like, hey, it's been 3 events since somebody's like messed something up, whether they went off course by like 100 yards or 10 feet. We had one guy a couple years ago who he came up to a sign. It said turn right. The volunteer told him to turn right, and he went left. And it's in a park. It's Prince William Forest Park, which we were talking about earlier, where self-service is terrible. So by the time I get that information and I get it communicated to my staff, he's already past that next point. And I finally get it to the next staff person. They're like, oh, crap, I'll go tell him to turn around. Well, his 10K was like 8 miles.
No way.
No.
And he wasn't he wasn't really upset because we explained, like, hey, this is what happened. And he's like, oh, that's why no one else was going this way. Yeah. And he had music in and stuff like that. But every now and then people will surprise you. And make some interesting choices. So always want to make sure you make it as obvious as possible and as clear as possible too.
Yeah. I could keep going, but I know you got some too.
No, I just thought that was super interesting about like kind of even the background, because how we all got into doing your events was Miguel and I very similarly had no experience with runners. We were both basketball players and I played football, and we were more like competitive, like contact sport athletes. And then when we got out of college, we got to a point where we weren't doing that quite as much. So we were like, what's another thing we can do? And we signed up for a 10K, one of your 10Ks, with no experience at all. And like, it's funny just because we thought we were like the best athletes in the world after doing a 10K. So to hear that you did a 15K just for fun the first time, I was like, oh man, that makes me a little less proud of my accomplishment.
I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know how far it was. I just ran.
Dude, we did that. We did that 10K, and the second we were done, we were like, yeah, we're like that. We're like that. And we started smoking a cigar by the river.
We were celebrating like we won a championship.
We were like, should we go to the casino tonight? Yeah. But for those who don't know, just like he said, to point out the obvious, 10K is only 6 miles.
Yeah.
So don't think we did something crazy. It was 6 miles.
Yeah. So then when you started that first event, did you have, because now it's a full-fledged company and you're doing all that, was there the vision for it to grow like that, or was it just kind of like this would be a cool event, or did you think of it more like this could be a company concept?
Yeah, it was a company concept, trying to figure out how to replicate the one event I did as a student and how to make that kind of a business from there. I don't think I ever, in my wildest dreams, would imagine I was doing 150 events a year.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I remember the 3rd year, I'm like, oh man, I've got 2 events this month. That's crazy. It's like 3 in a weekend, sometimes 3 in a day.
Wow.
And it's just, it was, I went into it thinking, how can I make this a business and give back to charity too? But I didn't expect it to be anything like 150 events.
Yeah.
So
when did you realize there was a need for like these running events? Like when did you see like there was a market for it? And I haven't seen any other organizations that put on as many races in this area.
Not even
as
close.
you. Yeah, no, I've because you were the one who, like, when I looked, would always be popping up. The only thing I think you guys don't do, and we could talk about it later, but I don't know if you guys do that many marathons. And that's cool. And but for the half marathons, the 10Ks, 5Ks, like, when did you realize, oh, like there's a real market? Like, what made you realize that in like?
honestly, it was probably like year 4 or 5. I had been working part-time jobs, doing 2 or 3 different things, and I'm like, this is decent income. My mom kept bugging me to be an accountant or something, and I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. No offense to any accountants, just I don't like to be 9 to 5. But yeah, I looked and I'm like, okay, well, I don't really have to work another part-time job. Like, this is enough. I guess that's kind of when I realized, like, okay, I've actually grown something enough that I can, like, live off of, and I can do whatever kind of in my life I want to. But yeah, it took 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So
4 or 5 years before you had a business where you could just like be in it 20, like that's your full-time job?
Yeah, it was probably 2016, 2017 time frame where I was like, okay, this is enough work that, and like financially stable, where I don't need a part-time job, and it's also taking up a lot of my time.
Yeah.
And one thing I think people may not realize is like when we go to these events, there is a logistical operation to the whole thing. You have multiple people who are helping with race day prep. You have people handing out like the actual tracking stickers and all of that. You have people, as you were mentioning, throughout the course that are kind of directing and guiding. So it is like, even though you think it might just be a race, there is like a logistical component to that. So how are you navigating that at first, and like have you figured out ways to make it more efficient? Like how did that all come about? Because it's not like blatantly obvious to, I think, a layman person to know how you do that.
Yeah, so if you look at a majority of the events we do a lot with National Park Service and a lot with Fairfax County Park Authority. And then we do a good amount on winery, cidery, brewery property too. And so with those three different entities, we probably do maybe 80% of our schedule out of those three. And for Fairfax County Park Authority, it's literally like an application that you fill out, and 90% of it's the same information. It's just change the course, change the date, submit. And we use a lot of the same courses 2 or 3 times a year. Sometimes Georgetown is a big one we use 10 or 12 times a year. But the permitting itself is pretty similar. We stay a lot on their property. That way we only have to deal with that agency.
Yeah.
Once you start crossing roads, which is what a lot of the other companies do, or run on streets, you got to bring in VDOT, police, which just takes more time, takes more money as well. But it makes it a lot more complicated. And we do some races where we have to work with VDOT, but it's 3 times harder than any other event we do, just because you have to get other agencies involved and in the loop and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I've got maybe 25 people that work for me on the weekends that do different things, and it's their part-time job, so they kind of schedule themselves, and I tell them, hey, I need 10 people for this race, 8 for this, 3 for this, whatever, and they sign up for it and whatnot. And then I've got 2 people in the back end that help me now in the past year with a lot of the logistical stuff of posting events, because once we have it approved, then we've got to post it on our website, Facebook, 3 other running websites, and make sure the information's all the same everywhere. So I've got one lady who does a really good job of getting all those details right. So that's taken a lot of work off my plate in the last year, which is nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah.
Cool. So I guess I know you kind of alluded to it, but I'll ask it anyways. Do you still like compete in your own races still?
No.
Okay. That's fair.
I am way too competitive. I used to run under 18 for a 5K.
Wow.
And so for me, and I've picked up some injuries. The back's kicked up a little bit, and quad injury and this and that. And so it's hard for me to look at the times I used to run and not be really competitive with myself. I still get out and run, either run or walk a mile a day, and I've done that for 10 years,
Wow.
10 something years in a row.
Without fail, rain or shine, no matter what.
I actually helped one of our employees move from just outside of Baltimore to Jacksonville, North Carolina last Monday, and got home at midnight, went out for my walk.
Oh, wow.
And then went straight to bed because I was exhausted. But yeah, every day. It used to be running. Now it's a lot more walking because of my back. Sometimes I'll kick up and make it a little uncomfortable, but every day. So.
What do you think? Like, that's a pretty like diligent activity to do every day. So is there like more meaning behind it, or is it truly like what drives you to do that no matter what?
When I originally started, I wanted to get in better shape. Like, I had started the running company, but I wasn't necessarily in great shape. It's a way for me to kind of get out. Everything I do is behind a computer, so it's a way for me to get outside, because usually I don't go to the gym or run on a treadmill. Kind of just get out. Like today, I did it in the rain.
And it was raining today.
Yeah, I tried to pick a lighter time, but yeah, it was definitely raining. But it's a way for me to at least get it out of the house.
Yeah.
Try and just clear my mind, listen to YouTube or watch YouTube videos or listen to a podcast or music or whatever. So, yeah.
So to piggyback off that, I know you kind of mentioned it already. So like, I don't remember the author, but there was this guy who wrote this book that's called, it's called something like, "What do you think about when you think about running?" And he talked about like a runner's biggest asset when he's running is his mind, right? Like I know for me personally, like when I'm running, I can run. Like physically, I'm fine. It's mentally, like what kind of headspace I'm in. Can I run? Like, you know, I remember the first time we did a marathon, those last 4 miles, like I could do them, but my mind was like, dude, quit. This is lame. I'm so tired. And even the last one I did, like I called this guy at like mile 23 and I was like, dude, I think I messed up my Achilles. Like I was just hurting, right? But like for me, I go into certain places that help me get to the end of you know, whatever it is I'm running. So, you know, you're a guy who's started a running company, you've been a competitive runner. Like when you're in the zone, like what is there certain things that you think about when you're running?
A lot of times I just zone out. I might get into whatever song I'm listening to, or honestly, a lot of ideas about the business would come from when I was running. I just think about like, oh, this would be a cool idea. This might be something I should do. And so it would be a way to kind of clear my mind, but also I would get a lot like mentally focused in on specific things, and kind of hash out some different ideas as I'm running. Like an idea that popped into my head about maybe we should do a race here or there. Then I start to kind of piece it all out why I would be on a run. So, but yeah, like in a race though, I could never like stop for water or anything that would break like my mental stride, like just locked in focus, because then I would just be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't even drink water on half marathons because I'd train without water. And I knew if I stopped to get water, my mental focus was done and I just might as well walk away.
Damn.
So it almost sounds like you have two styles running. One is like a mental health, like resetting clarity thing. And then the other one is this very competitive nature you have where you're like in the zone trying to conquer the course.
Yeah, and it's hard to get into that competitive one without looking at times and stuff like that I used to run.
Yeah.
So that one hasn't been touched on too much lately. So.
Well, I was doing some light research before our podcast, and it says you've done 21 half marathons, 2 marathons, and a 50K. So did you have any crazy stories? Or a 50K, just so people know, is 31 miles, so even longer than a marathon. So do you have any crazy stories or things from any of those that like stick out in your mind that were like, wow, that was like my best performance, or a crazy thing that popped up or something like that? Because that's a lot of running.
Yeah. And I haven't really added anything to that list in like 4 or 5 years because I just have been injured and got out of shape, and then that whole spiral. I guess the 50K, I was telling you right before we hopped on, was my phone cut off. It was overheating. It was in August in Virginia, and I'm running a 50K, and my phone was like, yeah, I'm done. And I'm like, well, there goes my music. But that 50K was just about survival. I got to the halfway point, and I'm like, this sucks. It's an out and then a back. And I tried to take it easy, and I ran the first, was that 15 and a half miles in 2 hours, 20 minutes. Tried to take it easy, but the second half was 3:40. I had not trained well, but I drank a Mountain Dew Red, like Code Red, at halfway. I was like, this sucks. I was like, I'm not out here to win any records. Like Michael Wardian, if you look him up, it was in the race. I'm like, that guy finished when I got to halfway. Like, wow, it's ridiculous. That guy's so fast. But I was like, I might as well enjoy this. But yeah, my phone cut off in like the last 2 miles. I was like, oh. And I just remember when I was running, I could see my quad, like both quads and both calves and one hamstring. You could see the muscle like pulsing as I ran. You could see it like trying to find nutrients or something. And I was like, if I run any faster, I will cramp in like 3 muscles. Yeah. So it was this awkward like old man walk for the rest of the race, and then slowly pick it up for a little bit. But
That must have messed with some people. Like they're all, because I know like a lot of runners get very intense in terms of their regimen of like, I need to take my gel pack at this mile mark and I need to drink water here and all that. And then to look over and see a dude just chugging a Mountain Dew, they must have been like, who is this animal?
Yeah, when you get into the 50K, don't call it an ultra marathon. People who run ultras will look at you funny. You have to do like a 50 miler to be considered an ultra marathoner, like realistically. But they do some crazy things. Like they'll eat whatever. They're like, oh, I'm gonna burn it off anyways.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I can dig this. Till I got like 20 miles in, I'm like, nah, this is too far. But I remember I was doing a half in Petersburg one year, and we took off out of the gates, and the year before I had finished third, and I'm like, okay, let's see how this is going. And I take off, and I see one guy at the start. Well, before we took off, I see one guy at the start line. I'm like, yeah, that guy beats my butt every weekend in Fredericksburg. I don't have a shot. So he takes off like a rabbit. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to let him go. And a couple other people take off trying to stay with him because he's the leader. And I'm like, that's a poor choice, but good luck. And so I pass everyone else, and I'm like, I think I'm in second. And we're rounded, we're coming up, and I'm like, okay, this first place guy's gone. Like, I haven't seen him since the first 200 yards of the race. But I'm like, everyone else is behind me, I think, and I don't see anyone else behind me. So I'm like, okay, I'm a mile out. Cool, we're getting to downtown Petersburg, not much left. I pass by a cop. He's like, hey, great job, man. You're in second. First just finished. I was like, I don't need to know he beat me by a mile. Like, I knew he was going to win. You didn't have to. Like, just mentally, I was like, oh, man, I just lost to somebody by a mile. Like, that's crazy. Yeah. That guy was so fast. But I was like, I'll take second. Take second. That's not a bad performance. But, yeah, that was hard to hear of like, oh, that guy's already finished, and I'm not even close yet to finish him. But... yeah.
Last marathon I did, I was at the halfway point, and a dude was finishing, and I was like, damn, he beat me by
half a marathon.
Yeah. I mean, it was... So I used to run, before I started doing 150 events a year, I'd run in Fredericksburg with another race company, and I'd do pretty well. But every now and then, there would just be someone coming out running like a 5-minute mile over and over and over. And I'm like, okay, I'm never going to be that fast.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, okay, I'll beat, like, the average person who's not going to try out for, like, the Olympics or, like, really hope to be in that idea of running. But, yeah, it was every now and then somebody just comes out and you're like, I don't care if I quit every job I've, like, every future possibility and I just stick to running. I will never be that fast.
Well, that's actually one of my favorite part about running the events is that I know I will never be that first place finisher or even be in the running, but I've found this kind of cool dynamic where I also would consider myself a hyper competitive person. So when I get to the events, I kind of get those juices flowing again, like it was almost like a sporting event in high school or like a competitive event. But what I find is that when you start running those events, especially in the longer distances, you kind of find this like cohort of people that you're competing with. So I'm never with those top 5 finishers. Those people are running crazy fast times, but I kind of get into like mini races with a little cohort of people. And like, I don't know if you follow David Goggins, but he always talks about taking people's soul. Like that's how he like mentally pushes himself to new things. So it's like for me, I always look at the runner ahead of me in my mini cohort and I'm like, I gotta win this mini race, and I try to take their souls. So that's like my favorite part of running probably is the fact that you can get into a race within the race to keep pushing yourself. And you usually set, at least for myself, it helps me set better times when you can do it that way. And it's like the mental games you have to play. So you don't know David Goggins?
I was just literally gonna say that. I was like, you don't know David Goggins?
The name sounds familiar, but I don't.
I think you would love David Goggins.
Okay.
I think you would. You should definitely look into him. I think he's like, runners might get mad at me for saying this, but I think he's like the face of running in the last like 3 years because he's inspired a lot of people, including me. If I had never listened to David Goggins, and I would also say like do your events, I would have never ran a marathon or get into running. But he's He's like that. He inspires a lot of people.
Quick note to add to that: he's a bit crazy.
He's a bit crazy.
He's a former Navy SEAL. His story is actually absolutely crazy. He's a former Navy SEAL. He like had this crazy military career, and then he started getting into while he was a SEAL or towards the end of it, he started getting into like hyper competitive events like ultra marathons and all that. So he's, I would say, the face of like the longer distance, and it's just a mentality thing. So he's kind of part motivational speaker now, part like runner / long distance event thing. But I would say that a large cohort of runners probably look to him as guidance. So I'm surprised actually that
I've heard the name, but I wouldn't be able to place it with anything.
That's cool.
That's sad for me.
Hey, you know what, though?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, you know what? Maybe one day, you know, you look into him, you like him, and maybe he runs a race. Never mind.
Yeah,
You know,
you
he's
never
in the
know.
area. And
Yeah.
he loves to just pull up, from what I've heard, and just, like, run a race.
Yeah.
Like, impromptu, and just kills everybody. Not literally, but, like, you know, just, like, outruns everybody.
Kills
in his
their
head,
soul.
he might actually be
Kills
Takes
doing
their
it.
soul,
But
yeah.
so are there any, since we kind of are, I would not classify Miguel and I as like elite runners, but like, are there any runners in the sphere that you know of? You mentioned that one gentleman, but anyone that you said these are kind of big names in the running space that have inspired me?
I mean, there's so many. I wouldn't say any like household names.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many runners that do my events now that are in like their 50s, 60s that are running literally every race, and I'm like, wow. Like, how can you be? We have a lady who just hit her 450th event with us.
Wow.
Since like 2018
Shout
or
out to her.
2019
Yeah.
or something, and she's 60. Marcia, don't kill me. Like 65. Like, how is she out there running every race? And I've run against her, and she just pulls her way up hills, and I'm like, God, she's killing it. But that's one of 20. I mean, we have a lady who, I think she's 78, that does our 5Ks. Not fast at all, but for 78, she's killing it.
Yeah, that's
like she
incredible.
is.
Something
She
to
is
aspire to
moving.
for anyone.
Yeah, and we've got. I mean, just so many of the. I don't want to say older, but so many of the more experienced runners, just to keep doing it every race and be consistent, and it's impressive. It's really impressive what they can do, and it's like, well, I'll get back in shape one day.
Yeah.
I've got another 20 years before I have to worry about trying to compete with their age group. So,
Yeah.
but
What do you say to somebody who, you know, maybe wanting to get in shape maybe for the first time, or just get into like the running space? Like, would you say somebody who's like contemplating running like a 5K?
you don't even have to run it. You honestly don't even have to run it. We have so many people that'll come out and walk it. Like the lady who's 78, she'll walk it in like 48, 49 minutes. She's moving. She's not running it. There's so many people that'll come out and just walk the event and make it a family thing, or just to slowly build up and, okay, now they're going to run a minute out of every 10, or run 90 seconds straight and then take a break. So don't think you have to run a 5K. There's a lot of people out there that'll walk them and then slowly build up, and we have people who have tons of different stories of losing this amount of weight because they do they do so many events, or just people who started at a 50-minute 5K because they mostly walked it. Now they're at 35 minutes and running most of it. So I would say don't feel like you have to run a 5K. There are people that run 20-minute 5Ks, but it's not like at my events, at least, there's going to be somebody coming out and running a 16-minute 5K, and that's the first 20 people in the race. And somebody runs a 16-minute 5K, that's probably the only one that month that'll go that fast. It's a lot more like your average person is coming out and doing a 5K. Yeah.
And that's actually for your event specifically. I've only done a few races that haven't been your events, but the one thing I will say is that whenever I go to a Bishop's events run, that I notice two things. One, it is a super wide range of people, like you were saying. So there are the people who are going there and they're really trying to break PRs or win the race or all of that. And then you'll have people who are walking it. So I think that that's pretty cool, that it's not an intimidating environment, even though it's competitive. And the other thing is, I can't tell you how many times I'll just be finishing the race and like huffing and puffing. And there's just people who are like friends there now. And I don't know if they go because they're friends or if they become friends at the events, but it's like a social event for them too, which I think is like super unique. Most people think, oh, I'll go to a race and go home. But these people are like having a community around it, which I feel like is very unique for running marathons.
Yeah. So when I originally started, I made the tagline or the motto, racing to give back to the community. And, it's just a motto for the first 4, 5, 6 years. And then over the past, I guess 4 or 5 years, it's really kind of changed, especially since COVID. We were really the only company over COVID that was doing events consistently. A lot of the other companies, like I mentioned earlier, they cross streets, which means their costs are up because they have police, VDOT, all that kind of stuff. We do a lot of stuff in parks, so our costs are down. We don't need as many runners to host an event. And so during that COVID time frame, we started seeing a lot of the same people over and over. They're like, you're the only race in Virginia right now. And of course, there's thousands of guidelines we had to abide by and how to get a 50-person race going. And I look back on it, I'm like, that's crazy that we had to go through all those different guidelines. But people started coming out over and over and over. And we have one lady who drives down almost every weekend from Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Like to run a 5K. And she's not breaking any records. And she's just coming down, running the courses. And we have, I guess it was maybe might have been 2020. My girlfriend had an idea for starting a VIP club on Facebook, just like a way for people to connect within Bishop's events. And we had one runner, she's since moved, but Rosella did a fantastic job of she would take photos at every event on top of what we did, but she'd get the moments that weren't crossing the finish line, like two people talking or hanging out or the goofy things outside of just the running. And she really kind of transformed it into more of a community where people would go, hey, like I noticed you weren't there last week and you guys go on vacation or something? Like, where were you?
Yeah. People are expecting you now.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah. And so it was kind of nice to, it really has turned into a community of people that run, but also like to hang out. And sometimes like I mentioned, we do races at wineries and breweries, and people will bring snacks and they'll sit there for hours after the race and have a beer or wine and an entire snack tray. It's like I'll walk over after we've cleaned up and I see an entire table like this just of all snacks. I'm like, wow. Okay. And they're like, Travis, come on, grab something. I'm like, I think I'm okay, but maybe. Awesome. So it really has turned into a community, and there's been a bunch of different ideas from different people along the way that have helped that. I just tried to listen to what people wanted. So
as crazy as COVID was, would you say that it kind of helped you because you guys were able to stay in it and just kind of work around all of the, obstacles of running a bit? Like every business took a hit during COVID. Every business had like a whole new set of challenges. So like, would you say like COVID actually amped you guys up because you guys were able to like go through that cycle?
COVID was almost like starting an idea for a business that you already know is going to work and there's no competitors. For like the first, so COVID was St. Patrick's Day weekend when kind of everything shut down after that weekend's races. And then we actually started events back up on Father's Day weekend. I think it was like a 40-person race. It was 40 people. It was like, is this a race? Are there enough people here to classify this as a race? Like I said, there were so many guidelines to follow, and every jurisdiction was different. But it really was like having no competition in a space that you knew worked. And so we got a lot of loyal followers from that. It was so crazy, though, with all the guidelines and trying to figure out what this park is going to do and what that park and what they're going to say. And trying to make sure everybody's safe and how do we social distance, and no one has the right answer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was probably from Father's Day weekend to almost Christmas time. We were at like 40-50% capacity of what we normally do, just because people weren't getting out.
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly started to come back after that. But those 40-50% of those people were just like there all the time, and starting to kind of follow. So it was, that part was nice. But as a business owner, not knowing if we're going to make it to Christmas. I remember in Virginia, we were setting up I was helping my girlfriend set up for her best friend's bridal shower or something. And the governor came down with like an order of changing, hey, no events larger than 50 people. And it was right after Thanksgiving, and we have our big December marathon in DC. I'm like, yeah, I was kind of banking on actually having this event. We've got like 250 people. I don't know how to, like, what are we going to do if I can't have this event? So I remember helping her set up and just literally being like, I've got to go home and like think. Like, I can't sit here helping you throw up streamers or banners or whatever. And,
Yeah.
And she's great. She was like, yeah, I get it. But yeah, I just remember it's such a crazy time to be like, are we going to make it? But looking back on it, it's like, one of the things we do on the website is we track how many races people do in a lifetime with us. And just to look at us, we keep like when their first event was, what year, and to look back and go established 2020. It's like, yeah, they started following us when it was no other races. And it's so many people that started in 2020. So
That's awesome.
And
dude.
I think kind of mentally transporting back to the COVID days, that was one of my few sanity checks during that time when we were all trapped in our houses and not having a lot. I know I was in a 1-bedroom apartment in DC by myself and kind of losing it. So my runs were the one portion of my day that made me actually feel like I could get some stress out. I was, like you were talking about earlier, clearing my mind, thinking all of that. So the fact that I'm sure there was a lot of challenges like you were mentioning, because I just know that in COVID, getting out of your house was a problem, but organizing events with 40 plus people, like that must have taken a lot of diligence to get through that. And I think you have been rewarded probably for the hard work that you went into, because I think a lot of people probably would have been like, can't do it.
it was hard. And I think, and I don't know the ins and outs of the other companies in the area, but I'd imagine closing streets down and whatnot. If they're getting 2,000 people normally, they can't have under 250. Their costs are more than 250.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, okay, well, if we're under 250 people, that doesn't really affect us. Of course, we were under 250 for a long time.
Yeah.
Because people just were very wary about coming out, rightfully so. I mean, nobody knew what was realistically going on. And everybody's trying to navigate a space that nobody has any idea how to navigate.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that side of COVID, being able to still maintain a business that people were looking to, I guess, buy into at that time because it was good for them. It was their way to get out and socialize safely. Yeah, that part of COVID was good. The rest, not so good.
Silver lining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, help solidify even more. So
Yeah.
that's awesome, man. Because so many businesses shut down during COVID. So I feel like just like economic cycles, like normal economic cycles, like businesses come up and they come down. They don't last. Like you guys lasted a huge wave. So that's awesome. Congrats to you. And we're happy because we're big fans of what you guys do. And you mentioned something when you were talking about that whole scenario. Did you by any chance look up our first race before you came here?
I did not. I meant to.
I don't know when we did our first one.
I think our first race was at Georgetown time.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Was that pre or post COVID?
That was definitely pre-COVID.
Okay.
I know for a fact that was pre-COVID. I don't know how I know that for a fact, but I know that for a fact. I know that for a fact.
That'd be cool to look up at some point
Yeah,
to see what we
yeah,
did, because
yeah.
it's been like that was our first ever running event was through you guys.
Yeah. I also think I have I mean, it's not weird. It's just kind of weird because you're here. But I think I actually have Bishop event shirts that I wore during COVID, right? Because I also ran during COVID. And I would take pictures. Sometimes I'd be wearing a Bishop event shirt.
Yeah.
You guys give out a shirt like every. I actually thought, oh man, I had an idea. I was like, I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna show this guy how many races I've been. I was gonna bring all my shirts, but I didn't. I forgot. But I think I got I've done at least 5 or 6. I think.
Oh, probably more than that.
Probably
We've done,
more.
like more 10Ks than that even.
I can't even remember. I know I have like 5 or 6 shirts or something like that. But
My girlfriend at that time came up with the idea because I'm like, what do we do? Like, how do I get people interested in doing a virtual run? Like, who wants to run on their own?
Yeah.
They don't really have a choice because they can't run with other people. But she came up with the idea for like a pint glass that says virtual runner, and you had to do so many events. And so people are like, yeah, I'll buy into that. Like, I'll do 12 events and get a glass, or I'll and get 2. So it was awesome because it was just a way for like these sane people over and over. And it was something for me to do during the week, packing 80 mailers to go out.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I'm just sitting in the living room, like packing
Yeah.
all this stuff to go out. And like every week it was not the most fun, but it was at least keeping the business going.
Keep it pushing forward.
that's awesome. So, this is a question I've had just because I'm such a fan of your events. Why do you guys not do like marathons? Is it just like, let me not even speak for you. What is it? I don't know.
So we have, like over COVID, we had maybe 4 or 5 during the year. Just because we but tried to give somebody an option during St. Patrick's when there's usually the Shamrock, or during the Marine Corps Marathon for 2 years. We did a marathon that time frame. A marathon, it's so long, you start to worry about like health issues with people. And the marathons we always do in Georgetown. So it's out and back twice for the half marathon. So my staff that see you at mile 3 are going to see you at mile 10. They're going to see you at mile 16, 20? So they are going to, or 23, they're going to constantly see you. So if you're like, hey, the first 2 times I saw you, you look fine. The third time, I think he's looking a little dizzy. So we'll have a group chat that day and they'll say, hey, this runner is looking a little dizzy. Check on him at the next aid station. So marathons just, it's a lot more on my end of just worrying about the runner themselves and health concerns and stuff like that. And a lot of the venues we do, finding that amount of terrain is tough.
Yeah.
Even the C&O Canal obviously runs from DC, and I think it changes names and goes to Pittsburgh. But you get further out and there's just not a whole lot of access points. So you're starting to worry about if something were to happen, how do we get to this person? And of course, being close to DC, everybody responds. Ambulances and stuff, they're so fast when we've had to call them. But it's more of a health concern. Plus, if you're doing a marathon, you're putting a lot of time, effort, and energy into it. Marine Corps is a great one. They run you around the monuments. Rock and Roll's a great one. They run you all through DC, stuff like that, where we're all usually off in trails and stuff like that. I feel like if you're going to do a marathon, like you're already spending hours and boatloads of money on the training gear and the snacks and whatever you're eating during training, and you might as well spend the $200 or whatever it is to register for MCM or whatever they charge now. And they do a great job. But we just kind of stay off to the parks and stuff like that, and health concerns mostly. But we did pick up a few during the COVID time frame to kind of give people an option. But yeah.
Oh, that's
You've
fair.
kind of alluded to it a few times. So I know there's those big players for marathons, but would you say in your kind of niche you found, do you have competitors in the running space, or how do you feel like you stack up against the others, or are there others out there who do it?
So I've gotten asked that question before, and I kind of think of it like, there's 10 different stores you could go and buy a pair of jeans from. You might want a really fancy pair from, I don't know, let's not even fancy. Let's say Hollister. It's not even fancy. Or you could go to JCPenney's and get like a pair of jeans that works. So you're competing, yeah, for somebody who might want jeans or running a race, but it's not the same experience. Like MCM, Pacers, Potomac River Running, they do a great job. They've got a little more of the bells and whistles, bigger crowds, where we are more in the parks, kind of getting you out into trails, seeing maybe a little more scenic places, typically a little cheaper, but we're also giving back to charity. So I feel like we have a niche where we're not direct. Like, I don't consider myself competing with MCM, even though they have, 8, 12 events now, something like that. Pacers, Potomac River Running probably has 40 or 50 a year. I don't really consider them necessarily competitors because they're looking for different types of runners. I'm looking for the ones that are going to stick around and hang out, socialize, make it more of a community, more of a family. Not that other runners don't do that, but it's just more maybe laid back, more about the family, the community, the giving back part than just strictly this is a how fast can you run this course. And a lot of our courses are brutal.
I can attest to that on a few of them.
Yeah, and I'm like, do you guys really want to run up this hill for half a mile? Okay.
Oh my
All
gosh.
right.
The hills, that's where they get you.
We did a series of races out in Delaplane last October. It was 3 different wineries, one in the morning, afternoon, and one in the evening. And it was 3 of our toughest courses. And people did literally 3 5Ks in a day.
Wow.
And then I had people come over, Travis, why did you do this? I don't know. Why'd you sign up? Like, you still signed up.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, that's fair. I'm like, if you're going to sign up, then I will do it. But
You build it, they will come.
yeah, apparently. Runners do crazy things. So
You got to have a little bit of crazy to be a runner, I think.
yeah.
Do you have any I know Miguel was asking about how to get started. Do you have any tips for maybe a more experienced runner, since you have a bunch of experience yourself doing it, as well as you're seeing runners literally every weekend? Do you see things that work well or that would help people maybe get to that next step in their running career?
Yeah, a lot of it's the training. The training is usually what will take people the next step. And most times when I've talked to different runners, and I even coach some on the side too, they don't run slow enough. They don't run slow enough for a majority of their runs. So like every run they're going out at 80% effort. So then your race day, you're at 80% effort because that's all, you haven't refueled yet. So a lot of times it's getting people to run slower, longer, and not really even that much longer, but just slower. Let your body heal by running. And I even did that when I first started, which is why I had so many injuries, is I would just constantly be like, oh, can I break my PR today? And like every day. And I'm like, that's why my body broke down. But just people don't give themselves time to rest and recover. And definitely the other side is check out the course map. That'll always help you. Elevation, stuff like that, course terrain, stuff like that. So you don't get to race day and go, oh, it's not a paved road. It's like, no, we're in the middle of a park.
Yeah.
Like, it's definitely not a paved road. Or, oh, I didn't realize there were so many hills. Like, yeah, don't sprint the first mile.
Yeah.
Like, save it for the hills at the end. Stuff like that. So
That's great.
Cool. And then how do you generally decide like what charities, I think you do like, I don't know what the percentage is, but I know you do like a certain percentage of charity and stuff like that.
yeah, so it's 25% of the profit to charity. A lot of the charities I initially had to reach out to and like, hey, we're going from 20 events to 30 events. I need some new charities besides just doing more for insert charity name.
Yeah.
Now I'll have charities reach out to me and say, hey, we want to put on a race. And I'm like, okay, well, what level are you looking for from me? Sometimes they just need me to come out and time the event, which is great because I can send 1 or 2 of my staff and they can go out and do it, and I can be a reference point for them if they have questions that come up. Sometimes they're like, hey, we have an idea to host a 5K in the middle of DC. Can you do it for us? I'm like, sure, I could, but that's a big headache and I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Like, have you thought of this option or this option? But every now and then I'll have charities reach out and just want to kind of touch base and say, hey, if you have an opening come up, let us know. And I try and figure out kind of where they're located, what they can do, and how they can help advertise the event. But I'd say probably 95% of our events are just annual events that every year it's like, okay, we did this race on Mother's Day for this charity. Do you want to do the race again? And 99% of the time they're like, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I honestly think the charity component was one of the biggest things that drew me to your events. One, that you were super accessible, and there was like, I didn't have to plan it out 3 months in advance because it was the only option. You're having one every weekend, but also the fact that if you're going to be paying to run, like the fact that you feel like some of it's actually going to a good cause, like makes you even all the more excited to do it. So I thought that was one of the coolest parts of it. It sounded like you started with that as your baseline. What made you think of doing it in that way?
Yeah, so one of the reasons I guess I was able to kind of get through my herniated disc and kind of all those issues was, at the time, one of my best friends was really sick. He was dealing with leukemia and all that and everything that came with that. And so he eventually ended up passing kind of right before I started the business. And I thought, I want to do something, because he was always so positive. Like, life could be dumping shit on him, and he was always so positive, like always had a smile, happiest guy ever. I'm like, I want to do something to like give back to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And so that was one of the first races I did, and it was kind of like, this is my way, in a small way, to give back to everything like he helped me with, kind of get through the crap I was dealing with. So, and he ended up being, they didn't bury him, but they had his like headstone or whatnot at right across the street from the university I was going to.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of like whenever I'd go for a run, I'm like, Justin's right there. Like, he would say, run faster. Like,
Yeah.
This is nothing. And he never complained about anything. So unfortunately, lost him too early, but he was a good friend. So,
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Sorry for your loss. That's touching though.
yeah.
Yeah. And I know we're coming up on time, and Teo's got his last 5 questions, but I do have, and I don't know if you have other questions outside of that, but I do have one more question, just because we kind of talked about on the way in, and we've kind of alluded to a little bit. So in terms of like expansion or anything like that, like, I know you mentioned, you're looking at a course right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like under wraps. I'm not gonna say where it's at.
You're fine. You're fine.
I don't want to
Proprietary information.
But like
Cedar Mountain Battlefield.
Okay. I just wanted to be respectful. But when you are looking at like a possible new location, or expanding, locations and stuff, like what do you look for in a course? Like what is something like, this is up my alley. I like this. What are you looking for?
Something scenic. Like Cedar Mountain Battlefield is a battlefield, but it's scenic. They've got beautiful trails. It's kind of out there where people wouldn't necessarily go normally. And just trying to find a way. Now that I think last year we had 17 people that did 100 races with us in just 2022.
In a year?
Like, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, people are crazy. It's like, how do I get them to keep coming? Obviously, they're going to come back. But how do I make sure they come back for everyone? And finding different courses. Because I hate running at Georgetown. I hate doing the whole Georgetown event. But people like the flat course. They fly in from out of the state, out of the country to come do those halves, those 5Ks. But outside of that, it's like, okay, I can put on 25 races at Burke Lake, but at the end of the day, it's the same course. So instead of doing 25, what if we do 5, and then I find 20 other venues who I can branch out into? So it's trying to find a way to get people out to different spaces they wouldn't normally go to, which I think has helped keep a lot of people around, because they're like, oh, we have one race at Dirt Farm Brewing, which if you ever go out to Dirt Farm, it is at the top of the hill. And yes, people do run up the hill, down the hill, back up the hill, and back down the hill for a 5K. I mean, it is literally you're looking up, and if you are driving up, you better make sure you like have your foot on the gas pedal because your car's going to need to get that extra gas to get up the hill. But we have people run up that, and it's like it's once a year, so people keep coming back. I'm like, if you guys want to run like 500 feet straight uphill, okay. If you guys will do it, I'll put it on. That's fine. But just trying to find different venues, different challenges, different scenery for people to do is really what I look for.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones that we also did together was one. It's in Manassas, the airfield.
Yeah.
That was a super cool one.
That's nuts, dude. Like I did that one. I remember being like, whoever's doing this, like putting this stuff together, he's a genius. Like, this is dope.
I got lucky. I reached out to them when I was trying to find different venues because they already had a race. They already had that race established, and they wanted to switch companies. I was like, sure, I can do it. And so we split up the responsibilities for that one, and they take a lot more of the getting the airport on board, VRE, police, stuff like that, and I handle more of the race day stuff, which is nice. But yeah, that one always seems chaotic because it is literally the runway closes at 8:00 and it opens back up at 9 a.m. 00. There's no leeway. If I'm running behind, tough luck. Runners, you better run faster because it's still opening up at 9.
Yeah.
And so it's just chaotic trying to have an entire airfield shut down. I can't imagine how they shut down Dulles.
Yeah.
I don't even want to like think about that because I'll wake up in the middle of the night and go, I'll have nightmares about that.
But it really was super cool.
Oh
I mean,
gosh.
you were on an airfield. You're running by planes. Like, aside from the fact of them like coming in and out right where you are, like you are on it like air tarmac. It was crazy. So I thought
So
that I
cool.
completely forgot about that, but that was like one of the coolest spots. And to your point, what you were saying, like, I think running's really this interesting thing because you're having a mental battle of like trying to push yourself to the max. But then when you have like another battle, which is new course or like, can I beat this course? So like you'll never run the same race twice. So I really appreciate that. If it was the same thing every time, I probably would like do it for the time. But I also like the challenge of, I don't know this course. Like, what am I doing? Where am I going? Is it going to be hills up? I think it's so cool that you do it that way.
Yeah, a real funny story about the runway. The first year I did it, I biked out in front of everybody. And I had a police officer who was biking with me. He was on a mountain bike. And I remember we were biking down the mile long or however long that straightaway is at Manassas Airport. And I just kept remembering looking over my shoulder, like, is the first guy catching me? Because it's so windy. He is just like in my draft of me biking. And I've got one of those like 1 pound, 3 ounce bikes. Like, and I'm tucked in aero bars and everything. And we get most of the way up the runway and it's so windy. I looked over at the police officer. He's like, hey, I'm just gonna go back to the middle of the pack and like make sure everybody else is okay. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, you're tired of biking as for your life to stay in front of these people who are just running ridiculously fast.
Wow.
I just remember like, oh my God, I don't know how somebody's running that fast because I can barely bike in front of them. But
That is awesome.
Yeah, that's dope, man.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things we do with every podcast is we wrap it up with the same 5 questions. So I don't know if you pre-screened it with checking it out, but we just like to get people's knee-jerk reactions. That's kind of the point of this.
Okay.
To give you a little bit about background on the podcast really quickly, is like the whole reason this podcast is Big Fish, Little Fish is because of a book we read where it's kind of 2 styles of business. Do you want to be a big fish or a small business in kind of a bigger business in a small pond or a small business in a big pond type thing? So with that, with Bishop Events, would you consider that a big fish in a little pond or a little fish in a big pond?
I'd say big fish in a little pond.
Okay.
I think. Yeah, I would say little pond. I feel like I know a lot of the runners and I know them by name, and it's like, okay, I'm going to see so-and-so this weekend and this person's, I guess, going on vacation and they're not going to run this weekend. And I feel like we've got such a loyal following of people that they've really turned it into kind of a big community around running.
Yeah.
Travis, Congratulations. You're the first big fish on the podcast.
Yeah, honestly, we've only had little fish so far. That's a good point. And I would agree. I don't know any other running company that's doing what you're doing. Like when I Google races in Northern Virginia, Bishop Events is owning a lion's share of all of that. And I think that's like incredible.
Search engine optimization.
Well, there are definitely other running companies, and they do a good job. I just think ours is more geared around, and I don't run the other events, so I don't want to like badmouth them or anything. I feel like ours is geared so much around the community, knowing so-and-so. And I try and tell people, hey, if you're new, go to Facebook, go to the VIP club. You're going to say, even if you post, hey, I'm brand new, never run a race, you're going to get 30 comments in one day of like, hey, glad to have you here. Like, feel free to say hi or whatever. Like, we'll be at this race. And you just see the same faces over and over. So it's like hanging out with friends every weekend and watching them torture themselves. So
bonding over pain. Okay, next question is, you get a little bit deeper here, but what is your biggest regret in life or business?
Oh, shoot. Oh, man.
Knee-jerk reaction. That's why we do it to people.
Biggest regret.
Life or business?
I guess I waited to go back and get my master's and my PhD. Like, I graduated undergrad, and then I waited like 4 or 5 years. And I feel like just kind of the way I think about business or think about just ideas were so much, like, I learned a lot of those ideas in my master's and my PhD program, and just kind of like how to put stuff together and how to kind of think about things in a little bit bigger of a finished product. I feel like I wish I hadn't waited so long to go back, even though it's like 5 years. It was also crazy to be out of school, and then now you're like hitting all these papers and whatever. You're like, I thought I was done with that. I don't know if I'll probably think of something bigger than that.
If it makes you feel better, we asked each other in episode 1, and I hate my response. I don't know why I thought of it. So.
I have a terrible response. I don't even want to talk about it.
Okay, so then.
On the podcast, there's no way to get around it.
Well, you can watch it. It was just like, after I did, I was like, don't. You know what I mean?
The next one, kind of on the other side of the spectrum, what is your biggest goal in either for Bishop Events or, let's just start there. Biggest goal for Bishop Events.
I guess to keep it going with the community feel and not make it something necessarily that's so big it becomes commercialized. And I've had people reach out and like, hey, I'm moving to Texas. Can you do something like this here? And I'm like, but if I'm not in Texas, it's not Bishop's Events. Like, I'm not there. And you're not going to have the same like people, the same feeling. And then other companies can grow it and whatnot. It's not anything revolutionary that I necessarily did. It's just trying to know those people and trying to get them to come back and see them go from their first event to their 100th, where we give them people. When I first thought, like, we'll do lifetime awards, 25, 50, 75, 100, different prizes at each. At 100, I was like, I'm going to give them like this nice jacket with their name on it. It'll say Ruby Club. And I'll give them, I don't know, like a 2-foot tall garden chess piece, Bishop chess piece that's plastic. You know, like this kind you see like at a nice hotel where you can play chess and they're like yay high. And people are like, oh my God, I can't wait until I get it. I was like, it's just a 2-foot tall plastic Bishop. Like, that's weird, but okay. Like, if people buy in and they do their first event and they're like, oh, that's cool, somebody got that. And I'm like, cool. Yeah. I'm glad you liked it, because I didn't think people would really like it. But I guess just trying to keep that like small race feel, despite doing so many events.
Yeah.
You play chess?
Not well.
Okay, that's fair.
Not well.
I just connected, because I know your last name is Bishop, but I didn't think Bishop like chess. But now I'm looking, I'm like, That is a bishop.
That is a bishop.
Did you ever make that connection?
I knew the chess piece, but I did not put bishop with the chess piece. That's great
Because
marketing.
we play chess.
On
We
the
love chess.
episodes we do of the podcast, just us two, we play chess. This is a
Okay.
very small.
Oh, then I'm definitely not going to play either of you. You'd be like, yeah, I beat you in 6 moves. I'm like, yep, there's my competitive side.
You'd beat Miguel. Don't worry, he's not that good.
Oh no, I'm very good. I'm much better than him.
Do you kind of follow up to that? Do you have like a tangible goal for next year of like how many events you want to do? Or are you aspiring to a specific thing? 150 is already pretty incredible.
So, number of events, maybe just expanding it in terms of, like, there's races that don't have timing component to it, and trying to find those races and help them out.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll probably increase the total number of events. But last year in 2022, we gave back $85,000 to charity,
Wow.
which almost doubled 2021, which was our best year. We gave back $45,000 in 2021. This year, we're almost halfway through the year. After this next weekend will be end of June's events. I think we're going to be close to 50,000.
Wow.
I'll post about it, and then the second half of the year is better. So I think we're going to cross over 100,000 this year, and we'll see. But trying to just see kind of like, okay, let's keep getting that number higher. Because 85,000 blew my mind last year.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And then this year, like, since COVID, really since maybe 8 months after we kind of returned to things, like, my best August was 2021. And then my best, like, August ever was 2021. Then my best September ever was 2021. And so forth, like, all the way around until 2022. August was better than 2021.
Wow.
Except for, like, 1 month in the past 2.5 years or something like that. But then this year, January was better than any other month I've ever had.
Wow.
January, which people were signing up for races, cool. February was better than January. March was better than February. April better than March. May was by far better than April. So every month it keeps growing. I don't think June will beat May, but it'll definitely be my best June ever. And it's just crazy to see, like, how much can we actually give back to charity. And then at the end of this year, we'll actually, I think between Thanksgiving and Christmas, somewhere in there, we'll hit our 1,000th event.
Wow. That's incredible.
So,
That's awesome.
A lot of events.
A lot of events, and then for it to turn into tens of thousands of dollars going to charity, like, that's a tangible impact you're making on so many people in need. That is incredible.
Yeah. And I'm trying to get the charities to, like, that's just from our registration, our stuff coming in. We had a charity last year who raised $50,000 just from one race. And we gave them back $2,000 or whatever from the registrations, but they raised in addition another $50,000, which did not count into the $85,000 we gave back. And it's like, if I can get these charities to use that as a fundraising a little bit more, they could bring in, really help themselves out. And then you're taking our impact and multiplying it by 4, 5, 6 times, hopefully.
That's awesome.
So,
well, if this episode can help at all, guys, if you guys
Fair
are listening,
enough.
sign up for these.
Yes.
Sign up for these races. Let's give back to charity.
Yeah.
you don't even have to run.
Yeah,
The-
you're getting
you can
healthier,
walk.
you're getting back to charity. Like, it's a win-win-win.
Sign up for this event. What's the next event?
Saturday, Prince William Forest Park,
All right.
followed by Georgetown on Sunday.
There
Okay,
we go. We'll
okay.
get the word out as soon as we can. The fourth question we always ask is, and you mentioned that you listen to these a lot, what is your favorite podcast, or we add TV show, but if you have a favorite podcast?
I'm a big Chelsea FC supporter over in England, so I listen to a lot of their podcasts. Right now, it's not good to listen to. We're on the struggle bus. I also like crime podcasts. Crime Junkie, Park Predators. Park Predators, I wouldn't recommend listening to while it's 6 a.m. You're running through the dark in the woods setting up for an event. That can get a little scary because every tree branch snaps. You're like freaking out.
Yeah.
But I do set up the course a lot faster. But yeah, a lot of crime podcasts, sports podcasts. I actually coach high school football and soccer too
Oh, wow.
Nice.
in my spare time.
What's cool?
So I've previously, last couple of years, been the head coach at John Champ High School out in Aldi.
It's private school, right?
No.
Okay.
No. It's right next to John Paul VI, which is a private school.
Paul VI, like in Woodbridge?
JPV.
Oh, Paul VI. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah. They moved from Fairfax out to Aldi area. And then I actually coached football down at James Monroe in Fredericksburg.
Nice.
So a little bit of a drive.
Yeah.
But I know the head coach well, and he's a great guy, so I figured it's worth the drive.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm actually going to two-part this last one. But we're both huge basketball fans, so we always want to ask people, who is the GOAT or who is better, Jordan or LeBron? Do you have a take on it from a basketball perspective?
You don't want to throw Kobe in there?
Or you can throw Kobe in there.
I grew up.
The answer is for you.
Yeah.
It's probably still Jordan. It's probably still Jordan.
Love to hear it.
That's fair.
I do like LeBron, although he gets criticized so much in social media these days. But I think Jordan would too if he grew up with Twitter and Instagram and stuff. I just grew up as a Lakers fan, so watching Kobe play, even though he might have been a terrible teammate at the time, he just always had that instinct of like, you're going to get my best shot, even when he's on like half an Achilles. But that was just kind of like a mindset I could get behind. I didn't really get to watch Jordan growing up. I wasn't a huge basketball fan when he was still playing, except for when he played for the Wizards. But
yeah,
I don't think anybody really talks about that time. So
that's funny because the last guest also mentioned Kobe, even though I don't think he gets a lot of the GOAT conversation. That's interesting. But going with Jordan, final answer?
Go Jordan.
Okay.
Go Jordan.
All
That's
right,
fair.
part B, just because you mentioned the Chelsea, so this will be an ad hoc one. Messi or Ronaldo?
Probably Messi.
That's interesting.
Growing up, I liked Ronaldo better because I liked watching Real play. But there's just so much negative publicity around Ronaldo all the time with how his Man United return came back and how he left, and there just always seems to be some sort of drama. But I don't know. That's a good one. We'll go Messi.
Jordan and Messi.
Go Messi.
Fair.
All right. Well, that's all we had. We both are. I'm talking this guy into signing up for your July 4th run.
Man. I just
There you go.
There's
I gotta
no way
do
we
it.
can't do
I'm
it now.
doing it. July 4th.
You sealed the deal for it, so you'll
I'm
see us
in there.
July 4th.
I'm in there.
We think that honestly, it is incredible to hear your story and kind of how you started from one race to 150 a year, and how you're raising for charity, and how you're helping people with their health and all of that. So like, it is incredible to see you start a business like this, and we're super excited to see where it goes, and hopefully you see our faces slowly chugging along at your events in the future. But Travis, has been awesome, and thank you so much for joining the pod.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis.
Have a good one.
Oh, shout out the Pope.
Shout out the Pope.